Hello. Welcome to the most suspicious San Jose Sharks podcast, the San Jose Hockey Now podcast presented by the Hockey Podcast Network and DraftKings. I am back again. Sheng let me back for some reason. It's probably because he couldn't find anyone better right now. So,
or anybody else at all.
Or anybody else at now. So, Sheng, we are recording this Wednesday night, and it has been a kind of busy day for the Sharks.
Been a very busy day.
Very busy day.
When we talked to Doug Jr. yesterday, I was like, oh, there won't be a lot of news. And then all of a sudden, bam, 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 after we talked with him.
Yeah. So today we're going to discuss, of course, the what happened with the CUDA with Roy Sommer getting sent to the front office, John McCarthy being hired as the head coach. And then we have, of course, as Sheng already said, Doug Wilson Jr. joins to talk about the 2022 NHL Draft. I tried my best to get some little nugget out of him of who the Sharks might be drafting, but he laughed at me. So, and then we'll talk about some of the Sharks prospects. So, yeah, Wednesday night. We just watched the Flames Oilers insanity that's going to be the Battle of Alberta. Over under 100 goals for the series.
That's
you had to think about it first.
Yeah, I was like, how many got to score with that? That's about it's 14 right there, right? Yeah.
Yep. So, hockey. I will say the hockey playoffs right now tick better than the basketball playoffs have been. So that's just not trying to be biased as it is a hockey podcast, but I've been watching both, and I think the hockey playoffs have been a little bit better right now. But I think it's the game sevens. The game sevens have been really good. So.
Yeah, well, also too, I mean, I think basketball, in my opinion, usually doesn't get better till the conference finals or whatever.
Which is what we're at, and the Warriors blew out the Mavs tonight. So, yes. Yeah. So, let's start with the big news first, of course. I'm wearing a pizza. No, I'm just kidding. I got new shirts today. That is the big news.
I'm trying to stay consistent. So,
yes. So. You'll see I'm in a different location and dressed for work. But no, the big news is a big change with the Barracuda. Roy Sommer had been there for, since they built the hockey arenas.
A ton of time.
He was the original coach. He had actually invented hockey. I read it on the internet too, but he is going to move into a front office role with the Barracuda and John McCarthy, Sharks, Barracuda legend, career AHL guy. He is taking over of the Barracuda. He's been assistant coach with them for a couple of years, but I mean, this is big news, especially with, and it's not just that. They've also assistant coach Bones. He's reassigned to his role as a professional scout. Assistant coach Chason, he went to CAA to work with Pat Brisson. The goaltending coach is gone. Like, they kind of cleaned house, which is something you don't really see from the Sharks organization, especially after the past 20, 25 years. It's been a very tight-knit family, and it feels like the CUDA have big changes, and this felt like maybe it was the right time for them to maybe look towards a different path.
Well, JD, is it time for you to reveal that you are interviewing tomorrow to be John McCarthy's assistant right-hand man?
Developmental there are no assistant coaches, all developmental. Yes, I will be doing multiple podcasts, pucks in deep, full 200-foot game. I've got it down. So don't be a pylon. That's my defensive. Yes.
Defense is bad.
Defense is bad. Score goals. Chicks like goals. Yeah, that's my. I guess. Was it chicks dig the long ball? Chicks like goals.
Chicks dig the long stretch pass.
Yes. Oh yes. Nothing better than a long stretch pass. So. But no, I mean, this is really big with the CUDA, who've, like I said, they've other than the time when Roy Sommer was helping out when after Pete DeBoer got fired, he's been a mainstay behind the CUDA bench. And
1998, man. Yeah, that 24 years.
I was I think I was 7th grade.
I was in high school, but I wrote about it a little today. If you think about just this year for the Sharks, right, all the sort of Sharks luminaries that have gone and passed this year. Patrick Marleau officially retiring, Doug Wilson stepping down, 19 years as GM, and now Roy Sommer, who's actually been around actually not longer than Marleau, because Marleau was 97, but Sommer started in 98, and now he's I mean, he still will be with the organization, but definitely will not be the same without him behind the bench.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's going to be people saying with Sommer that this might have been, the Cuda didn't have a good season. They famously lost 15 games in a row. It might have been time for a new voice, or maybe just losing 15. We've heard a lot from the organization. Winning breeds winning, especially when in their development. And my thinking is they're moving to a new arena, right? They've got a plethora of new talent coming in between your Robins, your Weisblatts, Coes, et cetera, et cetera. All these guys coming in, fancy new sweaters. Maybe it was time for them to try to something new as they're heading in and trying to kind of build up the Cuda brand again.
Yeah, let me add too. This Doug will talk a little bit about this later, but sounds like they're also going to bring in more kind of veteran players to the Barracuda, and they want that to be a more competitive product. And when we talk about bringing veteran AHL players, it's not necessarily that they can. Not for them to block the young players, but for the young players then to have a standard to kind of achieve and to overcome to be to be a top line AHL player because they earned it and not because the team is so bad that they've got to play on the top line.
Yeah.
And so that sounds like a bit of the plan here. But I will say though with Roy though that when Roy's been given players a good team, he's won games. So I don't know if it's I to maybe to some degree I do believe them when they say that the record or whatever this year, 15-game losing streak, wasn't a big part of the evaluation. Because I do think that if you look at what happened at N when a lot of players were called up, right? A lot of the guys I expected to be on a Barracuda, like a Magna, Milosh, guys like that, right? And so they replaced all those guys with mostly ECHL guys for the most part, or lower level Barracuda signed prospects. And so this was not who was going to win with this group.
Oh no, I mean that
right?
that roster was terrible at the end of the season.
At the end of the season, right? Yeah. So.
Yeah, like it was, Lane Peterson was 1C, and he's a perfectly fine guy, but like
he's good at AHL, but yeah,
he's good. Yeah, he's a good AHL guy, but he's not cracking. But it's like he's got there's Gushin out there, and then there's just a bunch of dudes out there that are like and the Shark. I mean, that's been part of the Sharks thing is they just haven't had a lot of blue chip talent in their system, and now we're finally starting to see that blue chip talent starting to filter in. I mean, Ryan Merkley's been down there for a year and a half basically, and he got called up because the Sharks needed some help. But like, when was the last time they had a first round draft pick on that Cuda team for a while, or at least
let's say Merkley last year, I guess.
Merkley last year, but like it's been mostly your Sasha Shimleskis, your guys like that are kind of late round draft picks, and Sharks fans might be excited for the development. There's a reason why those guys were picked usually in the 6th or 7th round and stuff like that. They're not these like blue chip pieces that you're expecting to contribute AHL or NHL level at some point. So, and I mean, I feel bad for Roy where you can only do so much. What's the saying? You can't make chicken salad out of chicken shit type of thing. And I feel like that's what he was kind of given with. But again, 24 years behind the bench, it's a long time, and you just wonder if they're wanted a fresh voice and direction, especially with a bunch of new people coming in.
Yeah. No, I do definitely get that sense. And so, so that's part of what I kind of dug at after we did talk with Joe Will and John McCarthy. And afterwards, I dug a little bit more on sort of just you think about what is the difference between a John McCarthy and a Roy Sommer, right? And obviously the age is one thing, right? So there's some ageism in here. Lack of bolo ties. That's another difference, right?
Yes.
And I did want to add before I get to the point about kind of maybe why they went with John, but a couple of notes I wanted to add though before that were first that I do think that this was a very recent thing that was decided. I spoke with Roy Sommer, I think about 3 weeks ago, you can see the article. I asked him about a bunch of Barracuda prospects, right? Like he talked about Blichfeld, and
Yeah.
he did a number on Blichfeld. He talked about a bunch of other guys, Chmielewski, Leonard, Hadeka. You can see it all. It's on at San Jose Hockey Now. I also wrote it for NBC Sharks. But at that point, though, it sounded very much, we ended the call with, he's going back to Montana to kind of his ranch, and then I'd see him in dev camp, and so everything seemed like okay. Roy Sommer is coming back for his 25th year, and but then as things are transpiring, this morning, and I had a little bit of a sense of it actually the night before. It seemed like this was very recent, and so I just wanted to add that I do feel for Roy on a couple of points. First, that the winningest AHL coach in history, he has 808 wins. The second place guy has 636, and I know that's easier to get wins these days, with no ties and all that stuff. But nonetheless, though, that's a lot more wins. Yeah. So anyway, it's kind of unfortunate, sad in some ways that the winningest coach in AHL history has to end his coaching career, at least we presume, and his head coaching career on a 15-game losing streak. That's number one. Number two, that he's not going to get to the new building. And one of the side things, fun things about covering Roy over the last 5 years or so is just all the digs he would make at the tiny crowds and he wasn't cracking on the crowds. The fans were there. He's just talking about how the lack of atmosphere, 500 people, 1,000,
and he had like 20,000
in a massive arena, right? And he was not shy about sort of joking about that. And I think that he deserved, and so I'm not saying that. I'm not starting a change.org, get Roy Sommer's job back or whatever, right? But it's not wrong to say that he deserved to be in that building as much as anybody on opening night, and it's a shame that he won't be. And I understand kind of where they're going, the direction of the franchise, which I'm going to get to in a second. But I just wanted to say that note for Roy. Oh, last thing too, I mentioned my article too. And again, numbers don't matter in the big picture, but he was 14 wins away from 1,000 pro ice hockey wins as a head coach. 808 with the Barracuda, and 176, I think, as a ECHL coach before he started with San Jose AHL affiliates. And so, anyway, real.
I mean, at the rate that the Cuda were playing, it was going to take him 2 years to get there. So
that's true. That's a good point. That's a good point. But anyway, so that's just a little digression there. But I did want to say that a little bit more of the digging of the difference between John and Roy, right? And I just alluded to it. I don't think it's so much the winning part. Is you give Roy Sommer good AHL players, a good team, not just like a good first line or a couple good elements, but you give him a good team. He's going to win games.
He's won 800 of them.
Right,
so,
right. He didn't turn into.
You don't just win 800 games. Yeah. So.
Right. He's not a bad hockey coach, right?
Yeah.
But one thought that I kind of pursued and checked around and made sense is that think about kind of where hockey is going the last few years, and what's one of the trends that you hear about, and it's guys working with skills coaches, right? Right, be it like Austin Matthews, or over the summer, what are a lot of the top players in the world doing? Right, they're kind of meeting up with each other and going to skills coaches and playing these mini scrimmages against each other, picking up things from each other, that sort of thing, right? So there's a kind of emphasis on that sort of thing, right? So you think about John McCarthy, the last couple of years for the Barracuda, he was the development coach. And so that kind of fits that kind of transition going, development coach, skills coach, kind of working, same general kind of pathway to that, right? And so John talked about that actually to some degree, or he alluded to it when I asked him, just sort of he was a development coach before. Now he's a head coach. Does that sort of enhance the development part of his role, or does that take away from it? Because when you think of a head coach, you think of maybe more of an organizer or kind of a big boss, and not worried about sort of the details or the little skills or whatever, right? And he gave an interesting quote about that, about how they're kind of going to go away from that old school structure. He said that old school structure of, a head coach and traditional head coach, two assistant coaches, one development coach. And his quote was, the old structure was head coach to assistant coaches to one development coach, but moving forward, we're just all going to be development coaches. And we're all going to have titles. We're all going to have certain responsibilities. But we're going to all of us at the end of the day are going to be responsible for developing players. And so I think that's one way where I see, not that, again, that Roy didn't develop, Roy didn't get hands-on, et cetera, right? But John is maybe a little more recent into that. He's a little, he's just a little bit more in that sort of trend line, I guess. And another point that was mentioned or mentioned to me was that, John has a great relationship with the players, the current Barracuda players. And again, that's not saying that.
Yeah, he's literally won not that long ago.
So, he literally played with most of them, right?
Yeah.
Or a lot of them. And it's not saying that Roy didn't have a good relationship or a great relationship, but, it's a little different relationship, right? When it's a 35-year-old guy who just retired, who is kind of your,
oh my God, he's younger than me.
And he's working, like a different situation than sort of a guy that's been brought up in sort of that old system. And it's not that Roy didn't evolve. Roy had to have evolved to be around for 24 years, but just maybe a slight, maybe a little more in that sort of development skills coach kind of thinking, more modern in some ways, right? And I think that's sort of, when I think about what's the difference between a John McCarthy and a Roy Sommer, it could be kind of in that sort of can be looked at in that framework a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense, especially like you said, with the way the NHL is moving forward, where it's open ice, skill, can you make a play, and that type of thing. And and like he also said, where they're going to try to mesh the Sharks and the Barracuda, they're going to be playing the same system and stuff like that too. And that's going to be helping, these guys where they're not. And again, I don't know, I couldn't tell you the Roy Sommer system versus whatever the Sharks are.
Well, it's always been similar. Yeah,
it's always been similar, but it's you have to, especially with these guys, they're learning. It's already hard enough to learn, to be a pro hockey player, but then bouncing back and forth and stuff like that. And I think having a more cohesive voice, especially between the Sharks and Cuda, especially right now when you're, a lot of the Sharks' future kind of hinges on this 2020 draft class, this 2021 draft class, this 2022 draft class that they're about to have. These are going to be the pieces of your next core, and making sure that they're getting all the help, all the development that they can to play in this new modern NHL. It just makes sense. And like I said before, you've got a brand new barn you're opening up. You've got a influx of, this is probably the most talent the Cuda's had in a long time, at least on paper, right? And
well, in terms of young players, at least, because let's not forget, 2017, the Barracuda, they made it to the conference final.
I was at one of those games. Yeah.
So,
but this is in a long time. This is some of the most talent, at least on paper, that they're going to have. And it makes sense to try to, if you want these guys to develop properly and making sure they're hitting those milestones as they're making their way to the NHL, and try to squeeze every drop of them out of them. And, it makes sense to try to get someone that's their main thing is developing. And John McCarthy, he's a career AHL guy. I mean, I know he played like 88 games in the NHL, but he's a career AHL guy. Sure. He knows a lot of these guys. He knows the grind of going through an AHL season and playing pro hockey. And, I think this is a really smart move for the Sharks organization. And, I think it just adds another layer of excitement as the Cuda kind of, kick things off for this 2022-2023 season.
Yeah, I guess a final way, I guess, that I think about it is that, we talk about Roy evolving over the years, and he definitely did.
Yeah.
And credit to him for that. But Roy was evolving, but John's already there. In terms of just like being with sort of where the game is now, and not that Roy couldn't be there or couldn't get there or wasn't there already, right? But John's already there, and maybe that incremental difference that you mentioned, like squeezing that extra drop. So maybe this is that incremental difference, hopefully that makes that impact on one of these younger players or whatever. And we'll see, of course. But I think that's sort of like I said, John is already there, and just that little bit there, will make that difference, comparing one to the other.
Yeah, and I can't wait for McCarthy to get his hands on Ozzy. I just think that like Ozzy's gonna love McCarthy, just because of how tenacious Ozzy likes to play. And he said his favorite thing to do is go play in the corners and stuff like that. I think McCarthy's gonna have fun with him. But as we transition, some other news coming out, the Sharks have finally admitted one person that they are interviewing. So by the time you guys hear this, they will be interviewing Sharks legend Ray Whitney. Played with the Sharks in 91-97. Also was a scout for the Canes 2015 to the 2018 season. Currently works for the NHL. And it's pretty interesting that this is kind of, especially from, as I've joked before on my other podcast, the teal curtain, where you get literally nothing out of the Sharks and you have to pry to get any little nugget. It's pretty interesting that this one is a little more open. They've been a little bit more open about Ray Whitney, at least compared to the other candidates that they're interviewing, right?
Well, one thing I'll say is I don't think that this is from the Sharks, what we've heard about.
I think the Ray. Sharks are, this is me speculating very loudly, but I think the Sharks are kind of doing the NHL a bit of a favor here. The Sharks have, it's not like when they came out and they were like, hey, we have 3 candidates we're going to look at. They're like, oh, we have a bajillion candidates. So I think the NHL was like, can you slide one more over here and spend a couple hours and talk to
one interesting thing about Ray, of course, is he was a scout with the Canes 2015 to 18, but he's worked for the NHL league office for Department of Player Safety actually since.
Did they do anything?
2018. And one funny thing is that I learned that Ray was in Calgary tonight for the Calgary-Edmonton game out of Alberta. And I think it's funny that, of course, they would send someone from player safety to Calgary-Edmonton, because I think if you have Matthew Tkachuk and Evander Kane and guys like that, Milan Lucic and Zach Kassian all on the same ice.
I'm ready for Brady Tkachuk.
Yeah, Brady Tkachuk
from the rafters.
Jumping in, right? Yeah.
Oh my God, is that Brady's music? By God,
So definitely having a guy from player safety, there's a good idea. Also learned that Ray's interview will be his first interview with the Sharks, and it'll be over Zoom. So what that suggested to me, and I wrote about that today, is that the Sharks are still sort of in that initial phase. They talked about, Jonathan Becker talked about 20-25 candidates, and they would talk to that number, have kind of initial conversations with them. And so I think we are very much in that sort of initial phase still. Going to what you said about doing the league a favor, there is something to that I learned recently a couple weeks ago, talking to another kind of a prospective GM candidate. No, it wasn't Ray Whitney, but this person, this person told me that the league has sort of an underrated influence on sort of who gets interviewed. Not every candidate's going to be a league guy, but there's going to be a few guys in there that, if not for their association with the league or whatever, maybe they wouldn't be talked to or taken as seriously. And the quote that this person gave to me, this prospective GM candidate, he said that he's been told that you want a GM job, go work for the league. And you look at examples of guys who kind of jump from working for the NHL front office to if not a GM position, a team executive position. Brendan Shanahan is one of the more famous ones, where he had no when he retired, he went straight to working for the NHL, as the punishments are, right, disciplines are, and then he jumped directly to president of the Maple Leafs. Arguably the sort of the premier hockey job in in all the NHL, and he didn't go.
Well,
He didn't
the
do
good thing
anything in
about that
between.
is you're done working every April, so you don't have to worry about that.
That makes it even better, right?
Yes.
You can book 4 months off in the cottage.
Yeah.
Right? You can book that trip, the hike to up Everest in April.
Yeah. Should we worry about cancellation fee? Nah, honey, don't worry about it. Just book it. We'll be good.
But yeah, so with the Shanahan, like that's an example of a guy that's, like said, didn't grind it as a scout in between, didn't do this or that in between, and went straight from the league to executive position. Rob Blake is another example. He grinded out a little bit, but he worked for the league right after he retired. Worked for, I think, Shanahan, and then he joined the Kings as assistant GM. Of course, now he is the GM of the Kings, and
That's a good job
so
there too.
yeah, he's done a good job there. And so now going back to Ray Whitney, right, who's worked for the league for a few years now. Now I don't know if I would call it so much. I wouldn't go as far as calling it a favor. I don't know that for a fact, but
Yeah.
it wouldn't surprise me. Obviously, working for the league, I would say the way I would put it is that it's a definite halo over you, and it gets you that sort of that interview that you wouldn't get if you just grinded it as a scout all these years. So.
Yeah, it makes sense. And, it could be one of these things where, like, I don't think I'd be shocked, honestly, if the Sharks did hire him right now, but it could be one of those things where he interviews now, he gets a few pointers, he goes, maybe he takes a front, like, assistant GM job or something like that somewhere, or, he goes in interviews with another team, and you kind of start to build that credentials with him. And then, maybe a year or two down the line, when the next GM position opens up for whatever team, then he's like, oh yeah, I remember he interviewed with the Sharks, he interviewed with, the Coyotes or whoever, just throwing that out type of thing.
Yeah.
You kind of build that small credentials a little bit at a time, and then until he kind of makes his jump. So yeah, especially with kind of, again, how public this one's been, especially with how tight-lipped the Sharks usually are with everything. Again, I think, maybe doing the league a favor is probably the wrong wording, but I think they're doing the league a favor. So.
Well, I do think, though, that how public this has been, tracing it back, it started with Elliot Friedman, and Elliot Friedman was just speculation that, hey, that's a guy maybe to look for. And then Craig Morgan of Phoenix Sports jumped in and said, hey, actually, he is going to have an interview. It's not just speculation. He is going to interview with the Sharks. And then I learned that it's a first interview, and some of the details of that interview. I will say that, and I mentioned this in the first article I wrote about it, that it's sort of like a kind of like a coming out party. And like you mentioned, right, I'd be surprised if he got this job with the Sharks kind of first go around. But now people know that he's a guy that's there, that wants a job. Also gives him a chance to get his reps. As far as I know, he's not interviewed with any other teams. I could be wrong about that. We don't know that for a fact, but in the sort of the research I did, I hadn't seen any sort of confirmation of him, interviewing previously with any of the other vacancies. So this is a way for him to get his reps, and he's a name probably. His time is it won't be now probably with the Sharks, just a guess, but his time is certainly coming.
Yeah, I mean, you can. 3 years from now, Ray Whitney, GM, you can book it. So, Sheng, I think we've covered what was not going to be a very eventful day, turned into a very eventful day.
Yep.
And let's get into our interview with Doug Wilson Jr. But first, guys, hockey fans, the pursuit of the Stanley Cup is on. DraftKings Sportsbook, the official sports betting partner of the NHL, has an unbelievable offer for the most exciting playoffs in sports. New customers can bet $5 on any team to win and get $100 in free bets, no matter what, win or lose. So look to turn a small bet into a big day during playoffs. With DraftKings same game parlays, you can do just that. Create your own parlay by combining multiple bets, like which team will win, how many goals will be scored, and more. It's your shot at an even bigger payout. DraftKings is safe, secure, and reliable. Best of all, you can deposit and withdraw your cash whenever you want. So download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use the promo code THPN Again, use the promo code THPN, bet $5 on any NHL team to win, and get $100 in free bets no matter what. That's code THPN at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL. All right, guys, we bring in the best hair in the hockey scouting community. Doug Wilson Jr. joining the show today. We're going to talk some of the 2022 draft and some of the Sharks prospects. First, Doug, I got to ask, how is your dad doing? I think a lot of Sharks fans, with your dad stepping down, we want to, just kind of check in. How's your dad doing? How's he feeling? How are things going with him?
He's doing well. I've been on the road for a while, and he's been babysitting my two daughters. So he's
that's awesome.
Yeah, no, he's good. And for the record, I do not have the best hair. In fact, not even in our organization. Mike Ricci is way better than mine.
I don't know about that.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, I mean, in the whole organization, I think you got to go Carlson first, because that hair is. He cut his hair, but he got the Thor Ragnarok powers this year with it. But yeah, it's pretty hard to top his hair. And I think Noah Gregor is slightly underrated on the hair department. But
yeah, those are solid. But I'm old school. I'm going Mike Ricci, number one. Everyone else can fall in line.
All right, top three then. All right, because I like that. When we last talked to you about a year ago, you had the flow going, and now you've gone short. Erik Karlsson, and it's still looking good.
You're gonna unlock the Thor Ragnaroks of scouting practice right now. So yes.
Yeah.
All right. So with your dad kind of not being there, what's it been like at the just around the headquarters in San Jose and stuff? Has things changed that much day to day? Is it just weird not having your dad there around as much, or how's that been?
Yeah, to be honest, I'm on the road most of the time anyway. So my direct reports are Tim Burke and Joe Will. So my stuff hasn't really changed too much. I focus on the amateur side and college and European free agency. So, anytime an NHL team changes a GM, right, things are going to be different. But I think Joe Will's done a fantastic job, and Berkey's a mentor of mine. So, for me personally, things are still good, and Dad's healthy and in a good spot. So, to be honest, we're just kind of full steam ahead right now.
Well, Doug, I wanted to ask you where you are right now, because when we talked, we were supposed to talk yesterday, and you were supposed to be in Seattle for Seattle-Portland, I assume. And so where are you at right now? Looks like you're back at home.
Yeah, no, I'm back at home. I just flew back this morning. So I was at Seattle yesterday, and they got Portland tonight. So just watching games throughout. For the most part, I'm in Western Canada and the Pac Northwest. So just in the second round of playoffs right now, it's been a pretty good series, and then moving on to Edmonton, Winnipeg after this, and then off to the Combine in 2 weeks. So our guys, everything's kind of been pushed back a little bit. Usually the Combine is until the end of the season, but now we still have second, third round of major junior playoffs. So everything's kind of right up against each other here.
Well, I got to ask you here because obviously Seattle has a big time prospect there, but I want you to poo-poo the idea because you guys see a lot of people. So just a coincidence that you happen to be seeing Kevin Korchinski. You watched a lot of guys, at this point, right?
Yeah, we've got scouts at every game. So we had scouts at the Winnipeg Edmonton game, the Gatineau game, the North Bay games. Everyone has a certain area. So for us, it works out that Tim Burke lives in Boston and I'm in the West. So, we get to have crossover that way. But we've got scouts at every game right now. We got 3 guys at the World Championships over in Finland. So just middle of scouting season still.
Yep, because I know for sure someone's going to be like, oh, Doug Wilson Jr. was at Seattle yesterday, right after the draft lottery. Oh, my God.
Kevin Korchinski season's here, people. Doug, I wanted to ask, your personal process of scouting players. Do you like to watch the film first and then get the scouting reports, or you like to read up on them and then watch them? How do you kind of personally attack when you're watching prospect X? Yeah,
I'm actually pretty fortunate because our amateur group has been together for quite a long time, and then we recently brought in about 4 new scouts. And so our guys who've been with us for a while, Pat Funk, Robbie Grillo, Brian Marchment, Gilles Cote, Brian Gross, they've done a phenomenal job of kind of breaking in our younger scouts, like Ryan Russell and Neil McKenney. etc. And so, they make my job so easy. So everyone has an area. They put in their reports every single day, post games, and then I read up on all the reports. I'll watch a video of each of the guys. And then when we narrow down the players that are outside of, my current area, the, Pac Northwest, then I'll travel out and go see each of those leagues, 3 weeks at a time. So I'll fly out to Ontario, spend 3 weeks with Brian Marchment, Robbie Grillo, fly to Europe, spend 3 weeks with Shin Larson, Tommy Kallio, et cetera, throughout. So, my schedule it's honestly at the whim of the area guys, where they identified. I mean, I just think we have a really good trust level with each area guy. So I like to be prepared for every trip that I go on. So I'll focus on the video and the reports of the area that I'm about to go to. But we're now in the season where I'll focus on individual players for our list. So just kind of narrowed it down at this point. But for the most part, I trust our area guys quite a bit.
I wanted to jump in and ask you about one of your, now former scouts at Christopher Boucher left. Now he's with the Montreal Canadiens. I think he's the director of analytics there now. And just asking about him because I spoke with him last year and he said that you were a big reason why he joined the San Jose Sharks. So just can you talk about that loss?
Yeah, Bush is great. I mean, I don't think, that's tough to lose someone after 2 years, but he got headhunted for a phenomenal role. Bush already lived in Montreal. Right. And Sportlogic, which he founded, is based in Montreal. With us, he was a pro scout, and he helped our coaching staff, and he helped our pro side, and he got headhunted to go run the entire analytics department for Montreal. So not going to get in the way of that, but it's a tough loss. He's a great communicator. I find in those analytical roles that one of the most important parts of the position is to be able to communicate your ideas in a way that you can have an actionable item, and he did a fantastic job with that. So I've known Bush now for 8 years, before Sportlogic was a thing, and he did a great job, and he's well deserving of the promotion. And it's a tough loss, but he's going to the Eastern Conference, so I'm good with that.
So when you're like on the road and scouting, especially now that you're kind of narrowing it down, especially with the draft, I think 6 weeks away or something like that. Mm-hmm. Like, what is the one thing you're looking for in guys? Is it like we've seen with your, last year you wanted to get kind of intelligent puck moving guys with when it came to defensemen, like we've seen, like with Bordelot and Eklund, where it's, that hockey IQ. Like, what is the one thing you're kind of looking for that when you're scouting and trying to draft these guys?
Yeah, I mean, without getting too much into it, I would say just getting to know them as humans and people. Yeah. I mean, I think sometimes you forget, right, when you do mock drafts or, things like that, like our business is people, and you have to really get to know people. And, it's fun going to games and getting excited about high skill or, dangles or soft passes and stuff like that. But, for me, the biggest thing is getting to know people. And I learned that from Tim Burke. And Sheng, I think you and I talked about this last year, is that you don't just draft a player and then, let it be and hope for the best. You have to draft every single player with a purpose and a development plan. And I find that the best way to figure out what that development plan is by getting to know the people. So, we're really big right now into communicating with teachers, parents, former teammates. I can ask their head coach, but every head coach thinks their player should go first overall. So, take everything with a grain of salt, right? So it just goes back to trusting our local area guys and how much work they do. But it's mid-May right now. I mean, lots of games have been played. We know how these guys play on the ice. And the most important thing is getting to know them as humans and if they fit with what we're looking for.
Well, a big picture, just not getting too specific, but just how would you describe this year's draft compared to previous years?
Every draft, the percentages of players that make it over X amount of games, if you want to use 100 games or 200 games, depending on position, every year the percentages are pretty similar. They're within a standard deviation. So it's not like when people sometimes say it's a really good draft, it's because they have Connor McDavid. Well, there's 218 other picks, right? Yeah. So, I actually really like this draft in certain pockets, and I'm really happy we got the 11th pick. I mean, the odds of us moving up, that's great and all, but I think for us, it would have been a struggle if we had dropped down a couple of spots. I really like where we are at 11. I think it puts us right in the wheelhouse of a group of guys that we've really narrowed it down to. And then I'm actually really excited about some certain pockets in the mid rounds where we have some picks. We've been known to move picks up and down. I'm sure that'll happen again. But I think for this draft, it's less the overall depth and it's more certain pockets of where guys can go that we're going to try and get into those spots.
I was going to ask you a little bit about the draft because we asked you this. We'll talk with you probably a couple weeks before the draft once again. But I've asked you the last couple of years, just like how deep is your what is your number of your sort of your due draft list, right? And so I know it's going to change over the next couple of months, but can you give a general number of just what the number is? 80, 100, 130, right? I think you had that a couple of years ago.
Yeah, that was the highest we've ever had. So it's lower than that, but I think I mentioned to you the only year that we ever got close to it was the Santeri Hataka draft because we didn't really have much after that. I think we traded a 7th round pick that year, to get into the following season. So we have a good number of guys this year, but the combine is in 2 weeks and we'll get a little bit more information. Plus last season with, the OHL not playing and there's a couple of older players that have performed really well. I think that's actually added to the group of guys here. So it's a normal draft right around, 100, 110, which would be, for us, we won't narrow it down yet for another 2 weeks post combine, but it's a good number right now.
With the combine coming up, how kind of difficult is it sometimes where it's like a guy's measurables might be off the chart, but then, trying to weigh that with maybe the production on the ice wasn't there. And you have to try to kind of balance like the potential of a guy compared to what you're actually seeing on the ice with him.
Yeah. Well, what's fascinating is there hasn't been a combine in 3 seasons, right? So the last 2 drafts we talked about this as a group, is I wonder where some of the guys would have gone if there was a combine and you got to see, their physicality and their interviews in person and how they tested. We didn't get to do any of that for 2 seasons. So, the guys that we had, Thomas Bordelot, he would have interviewed really well. Brandon Coe would have been off the charts in the physio and the speed. Ozzy can jump through the roof. I mean, it's fascinating not having a combine for 2 years and wondering if those guys would have gone where they went. So I think everyone's really excited about the combine this year to actually, be in front of everyone, see the testing, talk to them. It just kind of gets back to a normal draft. So, you lose that competitive advantage a bit if you've got area guys that do a really good job, but I'm excited about the combine.
All right. I think we've grilled you enough on this year's draft. One last question about last year's draft. So you have Beniers first, Eklund third. Second? Who was third on the board?
I told him not to ask this.
It doesn't matter because Eklund was there, right? So, yeah.
If it rhymes with Ballstead, you can blink. So twice.
No, I think from that class, a lot of guys performed really well. But I think Seattle got a good one, and I really like our guy too. So. Maybe Sheng's dog ate the list after 2.
That's Well, let's get into sort of the meat of the sort of the prospects right from this year, right? And the first one that stands out is William Eklund, and perception that he did not have the year that the year that he wanted in Sweden. So what were your thoughts of his season in your Gardens?
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to look at the numbers, right? He had 1 goal, and he had no goals with us in San Jose, right? So that's the easy thing to look at. But honestly, I'm not really worried about the numbers over there. His season was almost identical to Mika Zibanejad's. I mean, Zibanejad was drafted 9th overall. He played his 9 games with Ottawa. They sent him back to Djurgården, and then Djurgården got relegated. I don't think it hurt him very much. Lucas Raymond, I think, scored 25 goals in the NHL this year. He scored 6 last year in the SHL. So it's a different type of game. The rink is different. I mean, you can come up with all the excuses, but at the end of the day, when we made the decision, it was, if you look historically at the players that go back, regardless of their production, versus the guys that actually stayed, year 2, which is this upcoming year, always tended to work out better for the guys who go back. So I think obviously he would have liked to have scored more. He was playing third line center in a defensive role after the World Juniors. I think if you look at his points, all of his points came when he was a second line winger before Christmas. So when he comes over this season, he's going to play wing, and we've already talked to him about it, and he's in a good spot. So I look at it less as the points and the season and all that, and I look at it more as what happens with a 20-year-old William Eklund who gets to come to San Jose, get his apartment, be comfortable, compared to a 19-year-old living out of a hotel room, not knowing if he's going back or forth or whatever. So in the long run, I couldn't be happier to, one, have William, and then have William on a 3-year deal coming on here. So yeah, I'm happy with William.
Was there any concern with sort of the dysfunction maybe though in your Gardens? They went through multiple GMs, multiple coaches.
Not really. I mean, if we're being honest here, I don't think a 1-goal player in the SHL was going to help the Sharks this year that much, right? So, like, you can come up with adversity for really good teams and the guy doesn't play a lot, or really bad teams and he plays a ton and doesn't put up points. Like, at the end of the day, it was, we're now going to get a 1-year older, stronger, faster, intelligent William Eklund who had experience playing wing and center, and that's what we're going to add to the team this year. I mean, they played, I think, 50 games over there. So, I mean, would he have been better off with us for 82 NHL games? I don't think so. So I'm really excited about William. I talked to him the other day. He's ready to go. And hopefully he comes over and he plays wing and he takes advantage of his opportunities.
I was going to ask you about some of those, I guess, soft areas you mentioned. So those areas that we don't see in terms of his strength, things that he needed to work on when you guys sent him over, those things progressed well, you think, over there?
Yeah, I mean, I talked to him. The one thing I'm still working with him on, and Tim Burke's done a good job with it, is he's always looking for quality shots, and he's got to mix it up way more. Like, we need way more shot volume. And, it's similar to the running back theory, right? You can pound the ball, but you need to throw it to receivers once in a while to mix up the defense. So with William, he's always looking for high quality shots. And we told him, look, pass off the pads, more volume shooting. So he's got to keep working on that. Not trying to make the perfect play every time, but you know what? He was playing a defensive role as a third line center and trying to be as safe as possible. And luckily when he comes to us, we'll open him up a bit more. And that's the biggest thing.
Timo Meyer runs a hockey school in Switzerland in off season, so maybe you just send William over there, because anybody is going to teach William to shoot all the time, it's going to be Timo.
Yeah, Timo I think was like the best volume shooter 2 years in a row in the queue when we drafted him. So if anyone's going to teach him, it's going to be him.
Yes. So kind of next with Eklund, I guess Eklund and Bordelot plans to play them in World Juniors this year, or are you going to kind of wait and see how it goes with that?
We're working on that with the schedule right now. I mean, it's always our opinion, if you get an opportunity to play with your national team and play with the best players, it can only help with development. We've got development camp right after the draft, and then there's the World Juniors, and then we're hosting the rookie tournament in San Jose. So I'm sure there'll be some off time somewhere in there. But mine's last week.
Yeah,
exactly. And then plus we're starting the season in Europe this season too, right? So don't want to burn him out, but I mean, shoot, if you're 19 and 20, you're not going to get burnt out that much. It's hockey, right? This is fun. So haven't made a decision yet, but we'll make that when they come to camp.
When they come to development camp.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Some of the I guess not as much talked about guys, but some of the defensive guys. So we've talked about. I think Gannon Laroque's kind of already found a soft spot in Sharks fans, but like Gurov and the Pebble, yes. But like Gurov and Knizhikov, can you kind of talk about their development this season? I know Gurov, he had like a wrist injury or something like that at the beginning of the season, so he probably didn't have the season that he wanted. But can you kind of talk about those guys' development?
Yeah, well, it's actually Artem's birthday today, and I was stunned to find out he's 19, because if you see him, he looks 35. So that one's a little bit interesting. But Artem is a great kid. He, if you guys didn't hear about the wrist injury, he hurt his wrist up against the boards, kind of jammed it, and he came off the ice, and he wanted to go back out there and play, and he couldn't feel his wrist, so he asked the trainer to just tape his wrist to his glove so he could keep playing. And they're like, your wrist looks like it fell off. Like, no, you have to go to the hospital. And so he's one of the toughest guys like that we have, and he punishes guys. But for him, the biggest thing is he's a really good skater. Like, he's a very, very good skater for a guy of that size. And, you know, unfortunately, we didn't get to have Artem or Evgeny Kashnikov at our development camp and rookie tournament last year. So they're still pretty raw compared to some of our other players. But Cash grew 2 inches, so he's 6'6" now. We saw him when he came to Ottawa and watched our NHL game against the Senators. And then Artem is just a big horse, and he came when we played the Maple Leafs. So got to see him in person and all that. But, you know, I'm excited to see them at development camp. They both definitely need some work, but they have, you know, they can skate, and they're 6'4" and 6'6". So excited to work with them. And, you know, I know after 5 days on the ice with Tim Burke, they'll learn more than they did in the last 2 years.
Oh, good.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, and then Laroque, how excited were you to kind of see him play with the Barracuda and really hold his own in those? I know it was 3 games, but you know, watching those games, he did not look out of place, especially for an 18-year-old playing against grown men.
Yeah. Gannon, I mean, he's such a good kid. He's so professional. He does everything right. He reminds me a lot, not hockey-wise, just as a human being, as Mario Ferraro. And I mean, I can't say enough good things about how he prepares for games, how he preps. At our post-season interviews, he came in with a notebook and was ready to go and take notes. I mean, regardless of what happens with his hockey career, he's just a fantastic human being and so professional, and everything he's gotten, he's earned on his own. So there's some exciting things happening with Gannon coming up here, you know, in the next few weeks, and he's earned all of it. So I'm really happy for Gannon.
Ooh, ELC time? Question mark.
That's not my territory. But he's a very good kid who's earned the right, and he plays defense a lot like a Justin Braun type, where he's just big and he's got a good stick, holds the D zone blue line. Like, I mean, you couldn't tell a difference between when he played in Victoria and when he played with the Barracuda and how he held the D zone blue. And he's only 18. I mean, the sky's the limit for him, but he's just a fantastic human being.
Roy Sommer compared Nick Cicek to Ferraro, and so it sounds like in a couple of years the Sharks locker room is going to be really, really loud.
You know what? Gannon's not loud like Mario. He's just so professional. You know, Nick might be a little different. So yeah, but no, Gannon is just extremely professional. Loves hockey, loves being at the rink. So, you know, Mario might be a little bit more in your face. Gannon, it's just you respect him so much. So I'm just really happy with them as people and personalities.
Yeah, well, every boy band needs a quiet one. So
yeah, the kid is hockey 24/7. Like that's all he wants to do is play hockey and get ready to play. Hockey.
I mean, I went out to the island early on to see him, and he played 3 games in a row. He played 30 minutes a night. I mean, and he just kept on going. The energy he had in overtime in one game was the same as the first period. I mean, 30 minutes a night is crazy, regardless of what league you're playing in. And he did it all season long. So, yeah, if you can't tell, I'm a huge fan of Gannon Laroque.
The Pebble. Another guy we want to ask about, Oberg. You know, he was kind of a late round pick in Sweden. So is there potential he might be coming to North America soon?
Yeah, we're still working on that with Linus. He had a good season. I think he ended up with 17 goals, you know, 3 more in the playoffs. So still trying to figure that all out. The Swedish agreement with the NHL was just upped recently, and there's some new changes in it. So we're just kind of working through that right now. But he had a good season in Örebro. You know, went over there and saw him play some really good games against some high-end opponents. So he's trending well right now.
Can you speak to some of those changes in the agreement?
It's just their ages. So depending on how old they are when they sign contracts, they can stay in Sweden a little bit longer as opposed to the American League. So just kind of working through that right now with a guy like Linus who was drafted older.
Gotcha. Speaking of older guy, Ethan Cardwell, is he coming to the CUDA next season?
I don't think like the Barracuda is guaranteed for any of our guys. I mean, Cardsy finished the season strong.
Yeah.
We're also big believers in the overage season. I mean, you saw Tristan Robbins and Brendan Coe this year.
Sure.
But at the end of the day, we don't really choose that. Cardsy will come into camp, and if he blows the doors down, he stays. And if he needs more development, he goes back. But we're big believers in the overage year. I mean, you get to go back. You can wear a letter. You can put up points. You can be the guy on the team. We've always thought that it's a good idea, and that's kind of what we're looking at. But having said that, our kind of philosophy is, come into training camp, and if you make it, you make it, and if you don't, go back and dominate. And Cozy and Robbins did that this year.
How important is that for the confidence of a player? Because you can send him to the Barracuda, but maybe he only plays fourth line minutes or whatever, right? Doesn't get a big opportunity to produce. Maybe he loses confidence, as opposed to going back like a Noah Gregor. You mentioned obviously Brandon Cole getting to go back over and just absolutely just be a star and be the man.
It gives you something to fall back on, right? Like that way you always know in the back of your mind, at one point I was a dominant player on a top team, and I'm skilled enough to do that at the next levels. I mean, objectively, Noah Gregor probably made the NHL faster than he would have if he had played in the American League that year, because he went back, was on the Mem Cup team, ran the point on the power play, played 22 minutes a night, and then he made his NHL debut the next season. So I think, some guys, when they hear overage season, they think, oh, I'm going back to juniors. Well, not necessarily true. Like, you can actually make it to the NHL faster if you do what guys like Noah Gregor did. So, Tristan and Brandon are coming in as 01s. They're not really kids. I mean, they're going to be 21 this season. So you never know how it happens, but there's different development plans for different types of players.
How excited are you for the CUDA with such an influx of talent? Like you said, you're going to have Robbins and you're going to have Ozzy most likely and Co. And like all these guys who you've been kind of watching grow and develop, and now they're going to be in your, I know you're on the road, but they're going to be in your backyard. You get to, kind of see all this hard work starting to come together. Yeah.
No, it's exciting as far as bringing in the talent. To be honest, I'm still pretty pissed. We finished that season, on a 15-game losing streak.
Yeah.
We think winning breeds winning, and these guys can come in all super skilled, and as a scout, obviously, I'm super happy about that. But nothing's going to be given to them. I mean, we're going to bring in competition at the NHL and AHL level. Like, that team just missed the playoffs for the first time, and that's unacceptable. So we're going to probably bring in some players for the Barracuda that will, be really good leaders, but will also take up a lot of ice time and teach these guys. And it's not any dissimilar than when, Tristan's 18 years old and he's got 20-year-olds on the Saskatoon Blades to look up to, right? So I am excited about the skill level for sure, but I'm curious to see how these guys do, with adversity when things aren't given to them and compete for their ice time. So from that perspective, I'm actually really excited about Barracuda games next year.
I know that new arena. They got the new black jerseys.
Awesome.
Everything's coming together. Yes.
Like this rink is. I mean, I can't think of a better setup. They got the practice rink there, Sharks practice there, CUDA there, SAP Center half a mile down the road. I mean, the setup is unbelievable. Like John Gustafson and Dev Conley, they crushed it. It's so nice. So I'm excited for these guys.
Are you happy you guys didn't end up in Stockton? That was the rumor, of course, that the original destination for the Sharks AHL team was Stockton, but then the I guess Calgary beat you to it or something like that. So
I am very happy we're in San Jose, Sheng.
Yeah, you don't want to drive in. Yeah, you just, like you said, it's a half mile down the road instead of having to drive to Stockton. No thanks. Who was kind of maybe an under the radar prospect who you thought had a good season this year, one that maybe it's not getting as much shine as some of the other guys?
I mean, I guess it depends, right? I mean, for me, I guess it'd be Ben Goodrow. I mean, his team was pretty bad, and on top of that, his other goalie partner, Anson Thornton, got an NHL contract right before the season with the Coyotes. So to be on a bad team and to also have your partner be an NHL prospect who has a contract before you, I think that there's a lot of, compete and fire in Ben's game. Ben is pretty electric. You like to see his big time saves, But I think Evgeny Nabokov did a great job working with him more technically. You
Mm-hmm.
know, sometimes if you're making the big saves, it's because you're out of position.
Yeah.
And it's nice to be an athletic goalie who can make those saves, but you don't necessarily want to be doing that all the time. And I think Ben did a really good job, especially in the second half. And I think you saw it if you saw any of his playoff performances where he was just absolutely shelled.
Yeah, I think he was outshot by like 100 shots compared to his counterpart. Yeah, I think he faced like 210 shots in the 6 games, and he was like 924 save percentage. Let's go.
It was wild. It was like he played 2 more games than every other goalie. But the good thing was, I think if you watch those games, he was much more square to pucks. He made some electric saves, but he made more technically strong saves, and that was a huge growth, I think, for Ben. So, you know, I think a lot of the prospects had good seasons. You know, some wish they were better than others. But for me, you know, Ben faced a lot of adversity and competitiveness for his net, and I think he did a really good job.
And speaking of something that you are very, I guess, a part of that's underrated, though, because, you know, when people think about you and your role with the Sharks, they think about the prospects and drafting and all that stuff. But like you mentioned earlier, you're a big part of the European free agency and, you know, the Sharks, what the Sharks do in that department. And so anyway, you guys signed a guy in Max Veronneau. So can you tell us a little bit about him?
Yeah, Max is a good player. I mean, we recruited him out of Princeton, and he signed with Ottawa, his hometown team. And the thing I like about Max is, you know, there's a little bit of a theme here, but, you know, he got to the NHL right away. You know, he played 12 games, he got 4 points, he thought it'd be easy. And then he comes in to the American League the next season, and it was not easy. And then he got traded, and he didn't perform in Toronto either. And there's 2 different ways you can go with that, right? You can either just pack it in or go put yourself in an opportunity to succeed. And I think him and Strauss-Mann both did that. They both kind of took their careers, you know, by the horns, went over to Sweden, and Max scored 40 goals over 75 games in the last 2 years in a league that's very hard to score. So, you know, Max signed a two-way contract, so he's going to have to earn an opportunity at the NHL level. But the thing I like about Max, talking to him now, when I saw him in Sweden versus when we were recruiting him out of Princeton, is that he's much more mature. He knows the NHL is not given to anyone, and he saw that it was taken away from him, and he went out and he performed and found his way back into the conversation. So I think, you know, he's going to be one to watch in training camp, just as far as what he can bring with his speed and goal scoring. But he knows he's going to have to compete, you know, to make the club.
So I presume he hasn't lost anything of what you guys liked about him, you know, 3 years ago or so, but he's just gained more maturity. Yeah,
I mean, he's 6'1". He can absolutely fly, and he can snap a puck. And you know, I think that's something we were missing at both levels. But his speed, he's 26 right now, so he's not a young kid. He's ready to go age-wise. But to score 40 goals in 75 SHL games, I mean, it's not a one-year wonder, right? He was consistent for 2 years, and he earned it. And to his credit, you know, he told us he's willing to do anything possible to make it back to the NHL. So if that's playing with the Barracuda and earning it, you know, more power to him.
And I got to ask you, since we have you in this space talking about this, I know you can't give us any names, but is there anybody else that you guys might be looking at from the European leagues that you guys are maybe close on? You know, something you can give us there.
No.
No, there's nobody you're waiting on, or no, you can't give us anything.
No.
Fair
enough. All right. Well, Doug, I really appreciate your time here. Thanks so much. The flow is looking great. Just how we started the show, the flow is looking great. And I look forward to seeing you in Dev Camp.
Awesome. Thanks, Sheng. Thanks, JD. Appreciate it.
Yes. Now, one last, if you like a guy who rhymes with Schmeckermaki or Schambert, go ahead and blink twice.
Tevin Torchinsky.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, there's some good hockey players out there. I don't know their names though, JD. I forgot all of them already.
I'll send you a list. We'll talk offline.
Send me your list. We'll take care of it.
All right. Sounds good, Doug. Thank you, man.
See you guys.
Thank you, Doug.
All right, we hope you enjoyed Doug Wilson Jr. I tried, guys, to get something out of him, but alas.
What was your interpretation of his answer to European free agents? He said no and then no.
No.
So
and then
what
more no.
what did each no mean?
I know. Maybe that's
Does
he
no
said it
plus
like-
no mean yes?
Yes. Multiple. What is it? 72 no's mean yes. Yeah, maybe he's got something up his sleeves right now. I know we're gonna have to dig deep. I actually was
Or
looking
maybe
at-
he doesn't.
Maybe he does it. Yeah. I was looking at some of the potential top like European and Russian guys who are unsigned and see if they'd started following the Sharks on Instagram. I was trying to dig deep on the
Oh, that's a good way to look at it, actually.
That's a good look. Yeah. So see,
anyone
or if they
start
started
following?
following, some of the Sharks players, something like that. Yeah. So, but alas, I was not able to find anybody. So, so we'll be back next week with more stuff that we'll plan out because we have a long time until then. You can, of course, find the show on YouTube now. On YouTube, just search for San Jose Hockey Now podcast. You'll find us there. Of course, you can find the show wherever you listen to podcasts. Apple, Spotify, Megaphone, wherever we're there doing our thing. So you can find Sheng at Sheng_Peng on Twitter. Of course, read his stuff on San Jose Hockey Now. I am at my fry hole doing dumb stuff as usual. And if you want to listen to someone talk 5 days a week about the Sharks, you can also do that at Locked On Sharks. Sheng, anything else?
Next week, can we just have for you a Lego head and you just like talk on the side? It seems like the third Lego you're building.
The Lego I'm actually going to be using is for the development, and it's literally just going to repeat the same 7 phrases of pucks in deep, keep your feet moving, watch the stick, stuff like that, harder in the corner.
So it'll be like one of those old Tiger handheld games that has 8 phrases.
Yeah, definitely. So I booked studio time this weekend to make sure I get it really nice and pristine. So yes. All right, we'll be back next week. Also, if you're on listening to us on Apple right now, take 2 seconds, give us a 5-star review. It helps the podcast.
Yes, we appreciate the reviews we got.
These
are the first reviews we received since July 2021. So
yes, so it does help the podcast grow. And so